I was pouring hot water into my chamomile tea when the phone rang. The clock on the wall showed 9 o'clock. My hands trembled slightly. Nights were usually quiet for me, but that night the silence was broken. I lifted the receiver slowly. Angela's voice came sharp and cold. She did not say hello. She did not ask how I was. She said only this: "Mom, I sold your beach house. Good night." For a moment, the sound of boiling water filled the room. My ears rang. My fingers stiffened around the cup. The words sank deep, heavy as stones. Angela was my daughter, my only child, the girl I once carried through storms and sleepless nights, the one I believed would never betray me. I did not cry. I did not scream. My lips parted just enough for a whisper. "You forgot one thing, Angela." There was silence on the other end, a pause. Then the line went dead. I stood in the kitchen, still holding the phone. The tea bag floated lazily in the cup. The steam rose, then faded into the air. I placed the receiver back in its cradle. The weight of her words pressed against my chest, but I would not collapse. Not tonight. I walked slowly to the living room. My knees ached with every step, but I moved with steady resolve. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp. On the table rested a worn leather journal. William's journal. My late husband's handwriting still filled its pages. He had written notes, dreams, reminders of love. Beside the journal was his old photograph. His eyes, kind but steady, seemed to watch me. He used to tell me, "Keep your papers safe, Yvonne. Paperwork speaks louder than blood." I sat down. My body felt heavy, but my mind was clear. Angela thought she had taken everything. But she forgot one detail. She forgot that the house was never hers to sell. I reached for my pen. The page in front of me was blank, waiting. My hand steadied as I wrote. The scratching of ink was the only sound in the room. Love can be lost, but memories are never for sale. I set the pen down and closed the journal. The chamomile tea had cooled untouched. My heart hurt, yes, but my spirit had not broken. That night, under the weight of betrayal, I felt something new. Not rage, not despair. Something quieter, deeper. A resolve born from silence. Angela thought the story ended with her call. She was wrong. It was only the beginning. My name is Yvonne Miller. I am 71 years old, a retired high school English teacher from Charleston, South Carolina. After decades in the classroom, I thought my days would be quieter, filled with books, tea, and the sound of waves outside my beach house. And that night, my life tilted on its axis. The phone call at 9 left me trembling but not broken. I sat alone staring at my teacup. Steam faded into the dim light. The past came rushing back louder than Angela's words. Charleston, 1982. William and I first stood barefoot in the sand, pointing at the weathered beach house no one else wanted. It leaned slightly, paint-peeling shutters loose, but to us, it was possibility. I still remember William's hand pressing mine. He said, "This will be ours. Not just wood and nails, but a home." We signed papers with excitement, not wealth. Every paycheck of his teaching salary, every dollar I saved from working at the library, went into repairing the house. Together we painted walls, pale blue, hammered shingles, and replaced broken stairs. I planted daisies outside. He built shelves for books. Our sweat became its mortar. Our laughter filled its hallways. The beach house became more than shelter. It became witness. Angela took her first steps across its porch. She cried when seagulls startled her. Every Christmas, William hung lights along the roof, even when storms tore them down. We hosted neighbors' barbecues, graduations. Life always circled back to Charleston sand. Years later, when William grew ill, he sat by the porch swing. His eyes rested on the sea as if memorizing it. He held my hand, frail but steady. "Promise me, Yvonne," he whispered, "that this house will never vanish into strangers' hands." I promised. And William, always cautious, left nothing to chance. He met with Attorney Klein, an old friend. They drafted a will precise and clear. He established a trust, placing the beach house as its core. His reasoning was simple. Life is fragile paperwork is armor. He told me, when love fades or betrayal stings, the deed will defend you. After his passing, Klein handed me a sealed green envelope. Inside was the original trust agreement, notarized and bound. William had attached a note in his handwriting, "Keep this close. It will protect you when voices turn cold." With it came a small brass key, labeled only with numbers. Klein explained it opened a safety deposit box containing the deed insurance and records William kept for me. That envelope has rested in my drawer for years. I never imagined I would need to touch it, but Angela's call forced me to pull it closer, resting beside my teacup. The next morning, I stepped outside trying to breathe in the Atlantic air. Neighbors greeted me as usual, but their glances carried something sharper. I overheard two women whisper near the post office. "Did you hear Angela sold her mother's beach house for cash?" Their tone was not kind. It was curiosity, judgment, and disbelief wrapped together. I tightened my coat, heart-pounding shame mixing with anger. Ruth, my elderly neighbor, crossed the street with her cane. Her voice trembled with confusion. "Yvonne, is it true? Angela told my grandson you sold the house already." Her eyes widened. Disbelief cracked through her wrinkles. I shook my head gently but firmly. "No, Ruth. She may claim it, but she cannot sell what isn't hers." Ruth sighed, almost relieved, yet sorrowful. "I thought so. That house has your soul inside it. No one else could sell it." Still, gossip traveled faster than truth. At the market, I felt stares. At church, silence grew when I entered. It was not cruelty, but pity. Pity cuts deeper than hate. I walked home slower, hearing echoes of William's promise in my ears. That night, I placed the green envelope on the table. I set the brass key beside it. I lit a candle, opened my leather journal, the one William had given me before his illness. On the first page, he once wrote, "When your voice shakes, let ink speak for you." I wrote, "Angela believes the house is gone." But William's hand still guards it. Paperwork remembers when blood forgets. The waves outside whispered through the open window. I closed the journal, pressing my palm against its cover. The world believed I was defeated, but I knew better. Conflict had already been planted. It would grow whether I wished it or not. I sipped my chamomile tea, steadying my nerves. The warmth reminded me that grief and betrayal could not erase memory. Angela's betrayal hurt, but William's foresight gave me armor. For now, I chose silence. Not because I was powerless, but because silence is sometimes the loudest beginning. And so the house in Charleston stood tall in my mind. Every board, every nail, every memory stitched into its beams. Angela could boast, gossip could spread, neighbors could wonder. But I held the one truth sealed in green. The key, the envelope, the trust, all waiting for the moment justice would wake. I extinguished the candle, folded the journal closed, and whispered into the quiet air. Love can be betrayed, but protection lives in paper. I will not let him down. The morning sun did not warm me. Its light only revealed the cracks I had been trying to ignore. I opened my front door, and there it was, folded neatly in the mailbox, a copy of the Charleston Daily. The headline stared at me like a cruel joke. "Local widow loses home after daughter's sale." My fingers trembled as I held the paper. They had printed it in bold letters with my name beneath, almost like an obituary. Yvonne Miller, widow. House sold. The article spoke of pity, of loss of scandal in a small coastal town. It told a story that was not mine to claim, written without my voice. Neighbors would read this. Ruth would see it, the store clerk, the woman at the pharmacy, the children who used to wave as I walked to church. The world would look at me and see a victim stripped bare by her own child. I folded the paper, carefully placed it on the table, and poured myself chamomile tea. The steam rose slowly, steady, as if to remind me of patience. Not an hour later, the postman knocked. His boots scraped the porch. He handed me a thick envelope and lingered longer than he should have. His eyes carried pity, the same weight I had heard whispered yesterday. "Sorry, ma'am," he said, shifting his cap. I nodded, took the envelope, and closed the door. Inside, I slid it open with William's old letter opener. A letter from the bank spilled out stark and cold. Dear Mrs. Miller, following the recent sale of your property, we regret to inform you that the outstanding balance must be settled immediately. The words blurred, but their meaning was sharp. They treated me as if I had signed away everything, as if I were complicit in Angela's scheme. Debt notices, payment demands, official language dripping with quiet violence. I placed the letter beside the newspaper. 2 false witnesses sat before me side by side, each telling a lie about my life. The pity in the postman's eyes echoed in my ears. By midday, the betrayal became flesh and blood. Angela arrived with her husband Michael. Their car pulled into my driveway like it belonged there. They walked in without knocking, carrying the arrogance of people who believed paper was stronger than blood. Angela's heels clicked across my floor. She looked around as though she were already measuring curtains, rearranging furniture in her mind. Michael stood behind her, arms folded smug. Mom Angela said, her voice smooth but laced with steel, the papers are signed. The house is no longer yours. I studied her face. The same eyes that once searched for comfort in the dark now looked at me with calculation. She was no longer the child who clung to my skirt at thunderstorms. She had turned into a stranger who wore her ambition like perfume. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. Instead, I smiled faintly, almost invisible. My silence unsettled her more than any protest could have. Angela pressed on, mistaking silence for surrender. You should understand. It's done. There's no going back. You'll have to move out soon. Inside me, emotions collided, grief, anger, disbelief, but I pressed them down deep beneath the surface. The audience of my life did not deserve a public display. I would not give them the theater of my pain. Michael smirked. We handled it cleanly, Yvonne. Don't make this harder. I turned my gaze toward William's leather journal on the shelf. Its presence steadied me. I thought of his words. Paperwork speaks louder than blood. I drew strength from them, letting silence be my armor. Angela mistook it again. She mistook it all. We've decided to use the money wisely, she said, her lips curling with pride. I looked at her. Wisely, I asked, my voice calm. Yes, she answered. We're going to Paris. There's an opportunity with my business partner, a new venture, something that will change everything for us. Paris. The word fell into the room like broken glass. Not debt, not stability, not even a home for her own children. She wanted luxury adventure and a life built on betrayal, a business partner. She said it with too much warmth, too much eagerness. It was not the voice of a daughter explaining her plans. It was the voice of a woman intoxicated by escape, by dreams not rooted in family. I kept my smile, though inside my chest a storm roared. I thought of the years I had worked extra shifts, the nights William stayed late tutoring students, the sacrifices we made to build that house. And now the fruit of that labor was reduced to a ticket to Paris, handed to a stranger in the guise of a business partner. Angela mistook the calm on my face for defeat. She did not know that silence could be sharper than words. She did not hear the gathering storm in my stillness. Pack your things soon, Mom, she said, glancing at Michael. We don't want trouble. I nodded, slow and deliberate, as if agreeing. My eyes did not leave hers. Angela, I said softly, you always forget one thing. Her brow furrowed. She looked uneasy, though she tried to mask it with impatience. What now, Mom? I leaned back, lifted my tea, and took a sip. The truth does not bend to signatures. Michael scoffed. Angela rolled her eyes. They turned and walked toward the door heels, striking against wood the sound of false victory. When the door closed behind them, I exhaled. My hands shook, but my heart steadied. The newspaper, the bank letter, Angela's arrogance, they were triggers, but not the end. They were sparks against the stone of my resolve. I walked to the table, opened William's journal, and wrote carefully. The world believes I am defeated, but paper the kind William left me will reveal who is lying. Betrayal cuts deepest in daylight, but justice waits in silence. As the ink dried, I felt his presence beside me, as if he too had seen Angela's mask slip when she mentioned Paris. The storm was coming, yes, but storms can be weathered when you know where to stand. I placed the pen down, closed the journal, and whispered into the empty room. Let them go to Paris. Their flight will not carry my home with them. I rose early the next morning. Sleep had been thin, but clarity carried me forward. On the table lay the blue-green envelope William had sealed nearly 2 decades earlier. Its edges were worn, but the wax remained firm. For years, it had been a symbol of security, something I tucked away and forgot. Now it was the map I needed. I slipped the envelope into my handbag, placed William's leather journal beside it, and walked into the cool morning air. My steps took me downtown toward the office of Marcus Green. He had once been a colleague of William's attorney, and in recent years he had become one of the few lawyers I trusted. His office sat above a bookstore, tucked between a coffee shop and a tailor's shop that smelled of pressed fabric. I climbed the narrow staircase, each step echoing against the walls, until I reached a polished wooden door with his name etched in brass. Marcus Green, attorney at law. He greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Miller," he said, standing to shake my hand. His voice carried the steadiness I needed. "You said you had something important." I nodded and reached into my bag. My fingers brushed against William's journal first, then the envelope. I placed it carefully on his desk. The seal glistened faintly under the light. "This is from my husband," I explained. "He left it for me before he passed. He said it would protect what we built." Marcus leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "Do you know what it contains?" "I only know it has answers," I replied. "And now is the time." He reached for a letter opener, but I stopped him gently. "No, I will do it." My hands no longer trembled. With slow precision, I slid the opener under the wax and broke the seal. The flap lifted, and I drew out several documents folded and yellowed with age, but intact. The first bore the title, Irrevocable Trust Agreement. Marcus's eyes sharpened. "This is important, very important." We spread the papers across his desk. Each page carried William's careful preparation, each clause written to shield against exactly what Angela had attempted. Marcus tapped the critical paragraph with his pen. Here he said, "This clause states that any transaction without your explicit signature, notarized and witnessed, is automatically void. That means any sale Angela tried to push through has no standing in court." The words steadied me more than tea ever could. I read the paragraph twice, then again, letting each word anchor me. William had foreseen storms, even this storm. He had left me more than memories. He had left me armor. Marcus looked up. "Are you ready to let the paperwork speak?" I met his gaze and nodded. My silence carried weight. My calmness was not surrender. It was the quiet edge of strategy. He continued, "We will file notices immediately. The bank will be forced to retract their claim, and the title office will confirm you remain the sole owner. Angela's signature, even if she forged one, will not stand." I exhaled slowly. The chaos Angela tried to weave her confidence, her public display, her arrogant Paris plans, would soon meet the stone wall of William's foresight. She had mistaken betrayal for power. She had mistaken signatures for truth. Marcus gathered the documents into a neat folder. "I'll make certified copies today. Keep the originals safe. When this reaches court, the outcome will be clear." I placed the envelope back into my bag, now lighter in my mind, though no less heavy in my hand. The sound of the wax breaking still echoed in my ears, like the first crack of thunder before a storm. Before I left, Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Yvonne," he said, "you need to prepare yourself for the fallout. Angela will fight. She may try to sway public opinion. She may claim you are confused or unfit. Are you ready for that?" I thought of the newspaper headline, of the pity in Ruth's eyes, of the postman's awkward silence. I thought of Angela's smirk, of her heels tapping across my floor, of her careless mention of Paris. Yes, I said, I am ready. Not to fight her with anger, but to let the truth do its work. Marcus smiled faintly. Your strength reminds me of William. He prepared the papers. You are the one carrying them forward. I thanked him and stepped back into the hallway. Outside, the morning had ripened into noon. The street hummed with ordinary life people carrying shopping bags, children tugging on their parents' arms. None of them knew that inside my handbag lay the quiet key to justice. As I walked back toward my house, whispers followed me. 2 women outside the cafe glanced my way. Did you hear one asked? Angela sold her mother's house. The other shook her head. I don't know if I could ever forgive my daughter for that. Their voices trailed after me, planting a question that would linger with the audience who heard my story. Is forgiveness possible? Should it be offered at all? When the betrayal is so deep, I carried that question with me as I reached my front door. I set the envelope on the table once more beside William's journal and brewed another cup of tea. The steam curled upward, carrying both calm and resolve. I opened the journal and wrote, Angela believes she has taken everything. But William left me the truth, and truth cannot be sold. Let the paperwork speak, and let the world decide whether betrayal deserves forgiveness. As the ink dried, I felt the contrast sharpen. Angela's chaos grew louder, reaching for Paris spinning lies into headlines. My silence grew steadier, rooted in paper, in law, in memory. And somewhere between those two forces lay the judgment of society whispering the question that would never rest easily. Should a mother forgive a daughter who tried to sell her life away? I closed the journal, placed my hand over its worn leather cover, and whispered, William, we are ready. From the outside, my life appeared quiet, almost defeated. I spent long afternoons on the porch, rocking slowly in the chair William built, staring at the magnolia tree across the street. Neighbors passed by and assumed the silence meant surrender. They nodded with sympathy. Some waved with pity, and others whispered to each other that I had lost everything. I let them believe it. It was easier that way. The mask of weakness was my shield. While the world saw a widow wasting away on her porch, I was watching, waiting, and recording. Angela thought she had the upper hand. She paraded through town with Michael, showing off her new clothes and dropping hints about her trip to Paris. She laughed too loudly, drove too fast, and left receipts in her wake. What she never realized was that every receipt, every careless word, every appearance at the bank was a breadcrumb, and I collected them all. Inside my house, behind the closed curtains, I kept a folder on the table. Into it went copies of bank letters, photographs of Angela's visits to the real estate office, notes of her conversations that neighbors repeated to me without even realizing their importance. Each detail became part of a quiet mosaic, a story that would one day be told in a courtroom, not in whispers. The contrast between my outside and inside life was sharp. Out there, I was frail, Yvonne the widow left behind. In here, I was the keeper of evidence, the guardian of William's foresight. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch pretending to doze, the screen door creaked open behind me. Little Emily from next door padded across the steps, holding a sweating glass of iced tea in both hands. She wore braids and a smile too wide for her small face. "Mrs. Miller," she said softly, "Mama thought you might like this." I looked down at the glass beads of condensation sliding down its side. For a moment, my chest tightened. Such a simple gesture, yet so pure. I took it from her, carefully grateful for more than the drink itself. "Thank you, Emily," I whispered. "Tell your mama she is very kind." Emily beamed, then skipped back across the lawn. Her small act, unnoticed by the world, revealed more than Angela's boasts ever could. One child's offering showed respect, decency, and neighborly care. Angela, with all her arrogance, had forgotten these values. I lifted the glass and sipped. The sweetness was sharp, the ice cooling against the heat of the day. I imagined William beside me nodding. He always believed that the smallest actions revealed the largest truths. Later inside, I stood before the mirror in my bedroom. My reflection looked older than I felt lines around my eyes, silver in my hair. But behind the tiredness lay resolve. The world saw fragility. The mirror revealed the other face, the one no rumor could erase. I thought of the whispers that had chased me since Angela's so-called sale. Poor Yvonne. She lost her home. Angela was smart to move on. They did not know I still held the original trust. They did not know every forged signature would crumble in the light of day. As night fell, I turned on the small lamp near William's photograph. His face smiled from the frame, steady and calm as ever. I pulled the chair closer, resting the iced tea glass beside me, still half full. "They think I'm weak," I whispered to him, "but you knew better." I pressed my fingers lightly against the frame. In that moment, the two faces of my life met the widow in the eyes of the world, and the woman William had loved, strong enough to face storms, in silence. Outside, the cicadas sang their endless song. Inside, I felt the storm building, each note of evidence resting quietly in its folder, waiting to speak louder than all the pity in the world. Angela's laughter carried through the town like a bell. She moved as if she had already boarded her flight, strutting in heels, waving at acquaintances, boasting about her deal. Paris was on her lips in every conversation. "The deal is done," she told anyone who would listen. "I sold the house. Soon we'll be walking under the lights of the Eiffel Tower." People nodded, impressed by her confidence. Some envied her. Others pitied me even more. I let them think whatever they wanted. I sat on my porch sipping tea, rocking slowly. On the surface, I was the widow left behind. Inside, I carried the truth that would break her illusion. The truth arrived sooner than I expected. Late one afternoon, as cicadas droned and the sky turned amber, my phone rang. I recognized Angela's number. Her voice, usually sharp and triumphant, now trembled. "Mom," she stammered. The buyer pulled out. I stayed quiet, waiting. They said her breath caught. They said the deed isn't valid, they won't touch it, they won't sign. They said it's worthless. I let silence answer her. "Mom, do you hear me?" She pressed panic, rising. "It's not valid. They said your name is still on everything. They said nothing can happen without you." "What did you do?" I lifted my gaze toward William's journal on the shelf. I thought of Marcus Green's steady voice of the trust agreement spread across his desk. William had left me a fortress of paper. Angela had tried to storm it with vanity and greed. Now she had slammed into its walls. "Mom," she begged, "we need help. We could lose everything." Her use of "we" struck me. It was not we. It was her. It was always her. I inhaled slowly, steadying myself. "Angela," I said softly, "you forgot one thing." There was silence. Then a faint rustle on her end, a sound not meant for me. A man's voice cut through, low and impatient. "Angela, tell her we don't have time for this." The voice was not Michael's. My chest tightened, not from surprise, but from recognition. Angela had not only betrayed me, she had betrayed her husband. "Who is that?" I asked, my tone calm. She froze. I could hear her swallow the air shifting as she tried to form a lie. It's my business partner," she said, her voice brittle. The man spoke again, louder this time. "Stop stalling. We need the money. Paris isn't going to wait." The words hung between us, heavy, undeniable. A partner, yes, but not of business. I heard the intimacy in his tone, the claim in his impatience. Angela's breath quickened. "Mom, please. You have to fix this. They're saying without you the deal is dead. You could just sign. One signature and it's all fine. We can go, we can start over." I closed my eyes. Images flickered Angela as a child clutching my hand, whispering that she would never leave me. Angela laughing as William lifted her onto his shoulders. Angela promising she would care for me when I grew old. And now Angela begging not for love, not for forgiveness, but for my signature to fuel her betrayal. "You already started over," I whispered, "just not with the man you married." Her breath caught sharp and ragged. The silence on the line told me she knew I had heard enough. The collapse of her Paris dream was not just about a canceled deal, it was about exposure. The mask she had worn, dutiful wife, clever daughter, was cracking. "Mom, don't," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Don't tell Michael, he doesn't know, please. You don't understand. This is different. This is my chance." I looked again at William's photograph. His steady gaze reminded me that truth always revealed itself with or without my hand pushing. "You sold me for a dream, Angela," I said quietly, "and now that dream has turned to ash." Her sob echoed faintly. The man in the background cursed under his breath. I ended the call. The phone sat silent in my lap. I traced its edge with my thumb, the weight of betrayal pressing down heavier than ever. Not just one betrayal, but two. Angela had tried to strip me of my home, and she had turned from her husband as easily as she had turned from me. I rose from the chair and walked inside. On the table lay the folder of evidence. I opened it and slid in. Today's notes, buyer canceled. Deed declared invalid. Male voice overheard not Michael. Affair confirmed. The ink bled into the paper, sharp and permanent. I closed the folder and placed it back in its drawer. Outside, the neighborhood carried on as if nothing had happened. Children played in the street. Dogs barked. Neighbors watered lawns. The world did not yet know the cracks beneath Angela's perfect facade, but soon they would. I poured myself another cup of tea, steady hands carrying the pot. The steam curled upward, gentle and quiet. William's photograph caught the light. "She thought Paris would save her," I whispered to him. "But lies cannot buy a ticket." The house settled around me, calm, steady. The storm outside was hers, not mine. She had chosen her betrayal. She would carry its weight. Angela's collapse came quietly at first. No dramatic announcement, no public confession, just small cracks that spread into ruin. The first sign was at the bank. I was there to deposit a check when I saw Angela storming out, Michael trailing behind. Her face was flushed, her voice sharp. She clutched a slip of paper so tight it nearly tore. Michael hissed something under his breath, but she pulled away. That evening, whispers began. Neighbors outside the cafe lowered their voices, but not enough. They say the bank froze their account. Overdrawn, I heard. She thought she was rich. By the end of the week, the whispers grew louder. The SUV that Angela flaunted around town was gone. A tow truck had come in broad daylight, clanking chains echoing down the street. Children pointed, adults shook their heads. The same people who once envied her now laughed or pitied, depending on the tilt of their hearts. I watched from my porch. I did not gloat. I did not interfere. I simply observed, tea in hand, while the daughter who sold me unraveled under the same sun she once used to shine. The world judged quickly. Some said she deserves it, selling her mother's house. This is justice. Others shook their heads. It's too harsh. A mother should not let her daughter sink this low. The voices carried into my home. They created a debate larger than me, larger than Angela. What is justice? What is mercy? Could silence be crueler than vengeance? Or could silence be the only way a lesson was ever learned? Angela, once the picture of arrogance, now walked with her head bent. She avoided eye contact at the market. She snapped at cashiers, but her voice broke at the edges. I recognized the sound. It was the tone of someone learning what it meant to be powerless. Michael was no better. His suits grew wrinkled. His voice, once filled with pride, now cracked with frustration. At night, I sometimes heard shouting from their home across the street. The walls that once contained their laughter now trapped only blame. Through it all, I stayed still. I kept my distance. My strength was not in stopping their fall, but in letting it run its course. Silent education, William would have called it. He believed some lessons could not be taught by words, only by consequences. One afternoon, Ruth came to visit. She sat beside me on the porch, fanning herself with the newspaper. "It's all anyone talks about," she said. "Angela losing everything. Some say you should help. Others say you've done enough." I looked into the distance at the magnolia tree. "What do you think, Ruth?" she sighed. "I think she has to feel the weight of what she's done. If you lift it too soon, she won't change. But it's hard, Yvonne. It's hard to watch." I nodded. It was hard. Watching your own child crumble under the pressure of her own choices was not triumph, it was grief. But grief tempered by necessity. Days turned into weeks. Angela's clothes no longer shimmered with newness. She wore the same pair of jeans fraying at the knees. Michael's voice grew sharper, their fights spilling onto the lawn. Neighbors watched openly now, no longer whispering. Judgment had become entertainment. Angela was living what she had once mocked: poverty, disdain, the invisible chains of reputation binding tighter than debt. She had laughed when she thought she was above it. Now she walked in the shadow of her own arrogance. One evening I heard footsteps on my porch. The knock on the door was timid, hesitant. I opened it to find Angela, her eyes rimmed red, her hands trembling. "Mom," she whispered, "please." The word hung in the air, fragile. It was not the sharp command of the daughter who once said, "The house isn't yours anymore." It was not the triumphant boast of a woman dreaming of Paris. It was the broken plea of someone stripped bare, standing in ruins. I looked at her silent. My eyes met hers, and I saw both the child I once held and the woman who had betrayed me. Both faces stared back, colliding in one desperate figure. I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only answer. She waited, her lips parting, searching for mercy. But mercy cannot erase truth, and truth was already speaking louder than any word I could offer. Finally, she lowered her eyes, stepped back, and walked away. The sound of her retreating footsteps echoed against the wooden boards. Inside, I sat at my table, opened William's journal, and wrote, "Life teaches," in ways harsher than a mother's hand ever could. She sold me to escape poverty, only to find it waiting for her. Now she knows what it means to be disregarded. I placed the pen down, closed the journal, and listened to the night settle around me. The debate outside continued: justice or cruelty, punishment or lesson. But here within these walls, I knew the truth. Angela was finally learning. And sometimes learning comes only in the ruins. The day of reckoning did not arrive with thunder. It came with an appointment, a quiet room, and a folder of papers. Marcus Green had called both Angela and me into his office. His tone on the phone was calm, but his words carried weight. "It is time for the truth to be clarified," he said. I walked into his office steady and unhurried. The same brass plate on the door, the same polished wooden desk. But today the room held a heavier air. Angela was already there, pacing in front of the window. Her eyes were sharp, her clothes slightly disheveled, her voice brittle with nerves. "Mom," she started the moment I entered, "I only did this for us. You don't understand. We could have had stability." I said nothing. I sat down, placed my bag on the table, and folded my hands. The silence unsettled her more than any accusation. Marcus cleared his throat, drawing us both back to the present. "Let us begin," he said. "Mrs. Miller, do you have the documents?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the green envelope. Its seal had already been broken in his office once before, but now it returned as the central witness. I laid it on the desk, then opened it carefully. The papers slid out with a whisper, aged but unshaken. "Angela," I said, my voice steady, "you sold nothing. The house has always been protected." Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then finally spoke in a rush. "That's not true." The buyer signed, Marcus interrupted, pointing to the clause with his pen. "The trust is clear, no notarized signature, no sale. Every word on this page proves it. Legally, the deed Angela attempted to transfer is invalid. The buyer was correct to cancel." Angela's hands trembled. She sank into the chair opposite me. For the first time, she looked small. Not powerful, not arrogant, just small. "I only wanted stability," she whispered. "Life feels uncertain. I just wanted to stop worrying." I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp as glass. "No, you wanted Paris. I wanted dignity. You forgot one thing." Her eyes widened. She knew the line. It had followed her from the first phone call, from every moment of silence I had given her. The refrain she could not escape. "You forgot one thing." Marcus sat back, his presence a silent witness. He did not need to intervene further. The documents on the desk spoke louder than any lawyer could. And then came the flash, a sudden burst of light from the doorway. A local reporter, camera in hand, had slipped inside with quiet determination. The click of the shutter echoed through the room, capturing Angela's pale face. My steady hand on the green envelope. Marcus, leaning back with measured calm. Angela jerked upright. "You can't take photos in here," she shouted, her voice cracking. But the reporter only lowered his camera, scribbled a note, and left with the efficiency of someone who knew a story had just been born. The door closed behind him, leaving the sound of Angela's panic in the silence. "Mom," she pleaded, turning to me now, her voice high and desperate. "You have to tell them. Tell them it was just a mistake. Tell them I wasn't trying to hurt you. Please, before this becomes public." I held her gaze. I thought of the neighbors' whispers, of Ruth's sighs, of Emily's innocent glass of iced tea. I thought of William, who had trusted me to carry his foresight, not to waste it on pity. "The paperwork already spoke," I said, "and soon so will the world." Angela's shoulders collapsed. Her sobs broke through her fingers, raw and shaking. Michael's absence was glaring. Her business partner's shadow hung over her. Her mask was gone. The papers lay between us, silent, irrefutable, heavier than her sobs. Marcus gathered the papers back into the envelope, then handed it to me. "Keep these safe, Mrs. Miller. They are not just your protection. They are your proof." I slipped the envelope back into my bag, its weight familiar now. Heavy, yes, but reassuring. It carried not just the law, but the truth. Angela whispered again. "Broken. I only wanted stability." I rose from my chair. "Stability cannot be built on lies, Angela. It collapses before you ever step foot on Parisian streets." I turned to William's memory, his steady voice echoing within me. Paperwork speaks louder than blood. Today the papers had spoken. And in their clarity they had revealed everything: betrayal, arrogance, and truth. Outside, I could already hear murmurs. The reporter had wasted no time. The story would spread, and with it, judgment. Some would call me strong. Some would call me cruel. But none could deny the truth. The house was still mine. The dignity was still intact. I walked out of Marcus's office, the sun bright against my face. Behind me, Angela sat in ruins. Her Paris dream collapsed, her betrayals uncovered. Ahead of me, the world whispered, waiting to decide whether silence was justice or vengeance. I tightened my grip on the bag. "William," I murmured under my breath, "they think I am weak." But you knew better. Angela's denial came first. It spilled out of her like a reflex, sharp and frantic. They twisted everything. "The papers don't matter. I was only trying to build something better for us." Her voice cracked as she spoke, her hands clawing at the air, as if she could tear the truth apart. Marcus said nothing. I said nothing. The silence in the room wrapped around her words until they sounded hollow, bouncing back at her. She turned to me, her eyes wild. "Say something, Mom. Tell me you believe me. Tell me you understand." I held her gaze but remained still. There was no need for anger, no space for shouting. The truth was already speaking louder than any mother's voice could. Her shoulders sagged. The fire drained from her eyes, leaving only exhaustion. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "I just wanted more than you, more than Michael, more than myself." The admission was soft, almost childlike, yet it carried the weight of betrayal. I thought of the house William and I built brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. We had never sought more. We had sought enough to raise a family enough to live with dignity. Angela had wanted something else entirely. Tears began to stream down her face. She pressed her palms against her eyes, but they kept coming. "I've lost everything, haven't I?" She sobbed. The house, the money, the respect. Even Michael. At his name, we all turned. Michael stood near the corner, arms crossed, silent. He had listened to every word, his expression carved from stone. When Angela reached toward him, he shifted, looking away. His silence was heavier than any argument. Angela stumbled forward. "Michael, please, say something." But he didn't. He simply turned his back. That movement alone spoke louder than rage. Angela's breath hitched. She swayed, gripping the edge of Marcus's desk to steady herself. "He won't even look at me," she whispered. "He doesn't respect me anymore." And then the phone on the desk buzzed. Angela snatched it up, hope flickering in her eyes. But as she stared at the screen, her face collapsed again. The name she longed for her so-called business partner, her secret, did not appear. No message, no call, nothing. She dialed quickly, desperation trembling in her fingers. The line rang once, twice, 3 times, then it went dead. She tried again and again, but the silence on the other end was unbroken. "He's gone," she whispered. "He left me." The room grew quiet except for her sobs. Her mask had shattered completely. What remained was not the ambitious daughter who had spoken of Paris, not the schemer who believed paperwork could be bent. What remained was a woman staring into the mirror of her own choices. She finally lifted her head and looked at me, tears streaking her face. It was me, wasn't it? My greed, my selfishness. That's why everything's gone. Not you, not the papers, not even him. Just me. Her words hung in the air like confession. I gave no lecture, offered no punishment. She didn't need them. The reflection staring back at her was punishment enough. I thought of William's saying, "Paperwork speaks louder than blood." Yet in this moment, it was not the paperwork alone. It was the mirror she could not escape, the reflection of a daughter who had traded love for ambition, family for vanity, stability for illusion. Angela sank into the chair, her sobs quieting into soft gasps. She no longer tried to justify, no longer reached for excuses. The silence had done what anger never could. Outside the office, I knew the world was already buzzing. Reporters would write, neighbors would whisper, the community would debate. Some would argue I was too cold, too unforgiving. Others would say justice had been served. But here in this room, the truth was plain. Money could be replaced. Houses could be rebuilt. But the loss she faced was deeper. She had lost the respect of her husband, the trust of her community, and the dignity that no fortune could buy back. Angela buried her face in her hands once more. "Mom," she whispered, broken. "How do you forgive yourself when you've destroyed everything I did not answer?" Some questions are not meant for mothers to solve. They are meant for the mirror. I gathered the green envelope, tucked it into my bag, and rose from my chair. Marcus remained silent. Michael remained turned away, and Angela sat alone, weeping before the invisible mirror of her conscience. As I walked toward the door, I thought of William again. He would have said the lesson was never about losing money or property. It was about understanding that dignity once lost is harder to reclaim than any home. Angela had sold nothing, but in trying to sell, she had lost more than she could have imagined. I stepped into the hallway, leaving her tears behind, and whispered to myself, "She will learn, not from my anger, but from her own reflection." The house was quiet, not the silence of emptiness, but the stillness of peace. I sat on the porch as the evening settled, the ocean breathing steadily beyond the dunes. The waves rolled in soft and rhythmic, like a heart that had finally slowed after years of strain. In my hands, a cup of chamomile tea steamed gently. The scent rose into the night air, sweet and calming. It had become my ritual, my anchor through the storm. Now, with the storm behind me, it was a reminder that life could still be gentle. The town had moved on to other whispers. News faded quickly, though some fragments remained. Angela's name was spoken in lowered voices, her story told as a warning, a lesson. Some pitied her, others condemned her. But no one doubted the truth anymore. I no longer needed to correct them. Paperwork had spoken. Silence had carried the rest. I opened William's leather journal on my lap. The pages were filled now, every line a testimony to the journey I had endured. His words were scattered among my own, a dialogue across time. Tonight I turned to the final page. With a steady hand I wrote, "Justice does not shout. It breathes in silence." The ink glistened under the porch light. For a moment I could almost feel William's hand guiding mine, his presence woven into every letter. When I closed the book, I did so with reverence. It was no longer just a journal. It was the record of survival, of truth, of dignity. Angela remained in the town. I saw her sometimes walking quickly, eyes lowered. Her clothes were plainer now, her laughter muted. She carried the weight of her choices with every step. I did not chase her away. I did not punish her. Life had already done that. Forgiveness, I had learned, was not a gift you forced into someone's hands. It was a door they had to find on their own. For Angela, that door remained closed for now. But perhaps one day she would knock. I held no vengeance in my heart, not anymore. Revenge consumes, and I had survived too much to let it eat me alive. What I held instead was distance, and in that distance, dignity. The porch creaked as I leaned back in the rocking chair. The night air was cool salt on my lips, the ocean a lullaby. I thought of Emily's glass of iced tea, of Ruth's steady presence, of Marcus's patient counsel. I thought of William most of all. "They think I am weak," I whispered into the night, "but you knew better." The stars above shimmered in quiet agreement. I took another sip of chamomile tea, letting it warm me from within. The bitterness had faded, replaced by something softer. Life would go on. The seasons would turn. And the memory of this storm would not define me, it would refine me. To those who would listen, I would offer this truth: justice does not always roar. Sometimes it waits, sometimes it watches, and sometimes it breathes quietly in the silence we choose to keep. So now I ask you, the ones hearing my story, if you were me, would you forgive Angela? Where are you listening from tonight? Drop your city in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so these stories of justice, silence, and healing can continue to reach those who need them. The ocean's rhythm carried into the night. I finished my tea, closed my eyes, and let the silence hold me. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of my story. If this journey moved you, please give it a like. It helps more people find these stories of justice and healing. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next chapter of life, family, and dignity. Now, I'd love to hear from you. If you were in my place, would you forgive Angela? And tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Drop your city in the comments below. Your words matter. Together, we are building a community of listeners who believe in quiet strength and true justice.